There's an urgency to replace these two tanks. Essentially, the city's been on notice for a number of years, probably at least a decade now, that that location, the Stewart Street tanks, are in a failure mode.
Actually, about a decade earlier, it was known that the rectangular tank was cracked, had been lined, and was probably still leaking. A study of the Stewart Street site was conducted in late 1999, and the report was sent to the city in March of 2000. This is what it said, with some drawings added for clarity. The engineers installed borings to quantify soil and water conditions below the reservoirs. After each borehole was completed, a monitor well was installed. S&H plotted water level measurements of the monitoring wells against the water levels of the reservoirs to determine if leakage from the reservoirs could be detected in the water table. It is clear that substantial leakage from the rectangular reservoir is directly influencing groundwater levels in the areas east and downslope of the reservoir. When the water level of the reservoir rose, fell, or stayed constant, the monitor wells responded in kind. It is not clear that significant leakage is coming from the circular reservoir, since no groundwater table increase was measured between December 13th and December 22nd, even though reservoir levels were commonly above nominal levels. However, the elevated groundwater table level between December 23rd and 29th cannot be attributed to any typical natural process. In fact, the substantial rise corresponds to the period when the rectangular reservoir was out of service, and the circular reservoir and associated piping were being used much more extensively. These observations suggest some type of intermittent leakage from the piping system, or leakage from the upper levels of the circular reservoir that are not typically in contact with stored water. Again, the conclusion is that the rectangular tank leaks. Based on this study, it can also be said that the circular tank leaks, but only when the water level is too high. And for 8 years after this study, references to Stewart Street identified one tank as leaking and needing to be replaced, the rectangular tank. The circular tank was said to be sound, or that it appeared to be in good condition, or that previous inspections had revealed little cracking or distress in the concrete. The 2007 Preliminary Design Review, or PDR, also noted that the exact condition could only be determined by draining and inspecting. But after discussion with city staff, it was decided to wait until after a new tank was built in the park to inspect the circular tank. Here's what was said in August of 2008.
Under any other construction scenario, it has been assumed that the rectangular type tank at Stewart would be demolished. We had hoped at one time that the round tank, the existing round tank, may stay in place. Again, the validity of this assumption can only be assumed or confirmed after the tank is drained and we've inspected it from the inside.
3 months later, in November, both tanks are said to be leaking, and failure could be imminent. At this special meeting in January 2009 at River Lodge, there was a less urgent assessment.
There have been fairly extensive historic repairs made particularly of the rectangular or the older tank. The reservoirs have experienced historic problems, including leakage, settlement at the site, and deterioration of concrete. None of these are unexpected or alarming.
And a week later, in preparing for the vote to authorize proceeding with preliminary planning, the phrase two existing and failing water tanks is repeated 4 times on the first page of the staff report.
There's an urgency to replace these 2 tanks.
Following a request for records relating to the leaking circular tank, a consultant sent the city these 2 photos. The accompanying email indicated the photos were taken in February of 2009 and that the photos show a crack in the round tank and a wet location on the perimeter slab. It concludes, this is evidence the tank may be leaking. 3 months after these photos were taken, the author of the email wrote a geotechnical investigation report. In it, he notes that they did not conduct a detailed inspection, but that the circular tank appears to be in relatively good condition. I have been told the city has no internal records relating to the condition of the circular tank. No maintenance records, no staff inspection reports. It would be possible to operate a booster pump station at Stewart Street if the circular reservoir were kept in service. Based on our experience, we would discourage the elimination or reduction of any usable storage. It is time to drain it, open the door, and take a look inside. If it is still sound, we should not be planning to demolish it. If and when it is at the end of its useful life, there is a simple, cost-effective way to have a new tank, which would be very valuable in the efficient operation of the city reservoir at Vansel, as it provides storage for the northeastern part of the city. What was considered high quality in the year 1904, by today's standards would not be considered acceptable. We can all note from a visual inspection of the reservoir the deterioration. The cure, of course, is the creation of a new, structurally sound and sealed concrete facility within the existing reservoir cavity. The existing concrete walls and floor can be used as an exterior form for placement of new concrete structurally sound walls and epoxy flooring, providing a sealed, non-leaking facility. The most cost-effective approach for wall strengthening is the construction of a new wall directly inside the existing wall. The existing wall can be used as an adder form.